Hey, my name is Gary. I'm a student at JTech, and I'm going to show you how to check the main bearing clearance with Plastigauge today. The first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to cut your Plastigauge with enough space on both sides, and then you're going to want to take your Plastigauge, have your crank ready into the block. Open up your Plastigauge. And set the little plastic or little clay into the thing there. Next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to take your thing, set it down there, and torque your bolts all to specs. Calls for 15 foot-pounds. So what you do is you set your torque wrench first. At 15 foot-pounds. Then you take
We're going to check the main bearing clearance. Alright, I'm a student at JTech.
And then it also calls to do that to 15 foot-pounds. And then and then you want to put your angle gauge on, because you need, with this particular engine, which is a 6.0 liter Chevrolet, it says to go to 85 degrees as well. For a second. Can you hold that? Then, once you torque all your bolts to spec, you just take the torque angle meter off and loosen the bolts.
What are these connecting ones, right?
Yeah. Well, this is the connector.
You are supposed to post an order that we're going to connect the piston to the cylinder and torque the bolts down properly to the connecting rod and connecting the cap. Once it's torqued down, we're going to use the plastic gauge to see the proper specifications.
And you just take your cap back off, and sometimes you have to use a pry. You just take your pry bar, pick up on this a little bit, really easy, and it comes right up.
You guys have to pull one cap off. We have to pull the entire bottom off.
There you go.
So it's easier for us to do it on the.
As you can see, your clay actually takes and squeezes. Now once your clay squeezes, you can take your meter on your Plastigauge, and this one's supposed to be no more than 0.255 or 0.025 millimeters. and you take your widest piece of the squeeze part and you look at it, and you can see that it's actually wider than 0.051. So this bearing here is actually way worn out. So you'd have to buy some oversized bearings to go in there. What we're going to do now is I'm going to show you how to perform a leak test on valves on a cylinder head. What you're going to do is you're going to put a spark plug in the cylinder in the combustion chamber, and then you're going to take and put water inside the combustion chamber as well. What you're going to do is you're going to take an air hose and a chuck and plug it in, and then you're just going to spray or force air into the into both ports, into the intake and the exhaust port. This is the exhaust port, that's the intake port. What you're going to do is you're going to plug it in. And as you can see, there was no bubbles, so that means that the valves are sealing properly into the cylinder head itself. Alright, now I'm going to show what you should do if the valves were leaking and they had air bubbles coming around here and here. What you do is you take these valves out. This is the intake and this is the exhaust. And the way you know that is the intake is always bigger than the exhaust. You take, and I'm going to have an assistant help me do this. He's going to put the spring compressor on it. And you have to make sure that your spring compressor is in the middle of the valve, and it's also sitting good onto the spring itself. And then I'm going to hold the head while he compresses the spring. And as you can see, one of the keepers fell off already. And next thing you do is you just take the other keeper off, and then you just let the spring up real slow. And there you go, you got your intake valve off or out already. And you can check while you have it, while you have the spring off, you can check the valve and see if the valve seat is seating good. And the way you can do that is you can put your finger over it, and if it has good suction, then it's seating properly. The next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to clean your valve, make sure it's dry and clean on where it seats to the head itself. You're going to want to do both of those. And then you're going to want to come over here and dry off your valve seat. And then once you cleaned the valve seat and the valve, what you're going to want to do is you're going to take a little bit of this this valve grounding compound, and you're going to take and just put a little bit on the valve ever so often, just a little bit. You don't need a lot. And then you're going to take the valve, put it back in its guide, push it all the way down, and then you can take your valve lapping tool here, put the little suction cup on the valve, and then take and just move it like you're trying to start a fire. And as you can hear it grinding the valve back into the valve seat. And as you can hear, it got quieter. So now you can take the valve back out, and you can look at it, and you can see this little ring right here, this little dark gray ring in the middle of the valve. That is going to indicate that your valve has ground back into the valve seat properly. And now you can take that valve and clean it back off.
Well, he brought them over there. Yeah, and they started fucking our Indians, and that's where Puerto Ricans were nuts.
Put it back over here in your spring. Clean your valve seat back. Now you can see that's clean again. Once that's clean again, you can take your valve, put it back into your valve guide. Alright, so I've showed you how to use this valve lapping tool here. There's also another way to do it, is with a power drill. You have to do the same process as the other one. Take a little bit of the grinding compound, put it on your valve. Put your valve back in its guide, just like this. Take your drill. You're going to want to loosen your drill to where it'll fit onto the end of the valve. Now you're just going to let the weight of the drill pull the valve down, and you're going to just go. Alright, once you start hearing that, then it's ready to be loosened. Take the drill off, and then push the valve back out. And as you can see, there's a little dark ring right there, which indicates that the valve has actually seated back into the valve, or the valve seat properly. So now you can just clean. Now you can just clean the valve back off. Then clean your valve seat. Now, after you put your valve back in its seat, you can take this here, put it there, and then I'll have my assistant come compress the spring back. And you can take the keepers, and the skinny side, you can see they have a fat side and a skinny side. The skinny side always goes towards the spring. So you can put that one on, then you can take and put the other one back on too, and you're going to hold it like you're pinching something, and then you're going to have your assistant decompress the spring very slowly. And as you can see, the keepers sat in there perfect, and that's all you need to do.